Hello and welcome to a new video. In today's video we're going to talk about modding your guitars. If you have, for example, a beginner guitar or something fairly inexpensive, maybe a kit guitar, you might at some point want to switch out different parts on the guitar and replace them with higher quality parts. For example, you might want to switch out the pickups, you might want to switch out the tuners or the bridge. And most of the times you will hear people on YouTube talk about switching out the pickups and saying things like, here's an inexpensive guitar, it's really good, but what you need to do is switch out the pickups. But it's not always the case that the pickups is the thing that you need to switch out. New pickups can be really expensive. In some cases, you might actually have pickups in a guitar that are higher price value than the actual guitar. It might make sense to switch out low quality pickups for higher quality pickups, but sometimes the issue with the sound of the guitar could be somewhere else. So locating what it is you actually need to do to get the guitar where you want it is really important. And there are other parts that might be better to switch out. Now before we start out, I just want to mention that I've made a video where I talk about mods you can do to your guitar that are really easy and that doesn't cost that much, or that actually doesn't require money at all. It's an old video of mine, but I suggest you watch it. It could be just what you need, and I'll have a link in the description to that video. So if you're interested, you could watch that video. I would also encourage you to watch my series of videos called Building Jimi Hendrix Harley Benton Kit Guitar. Don't let the title fool you, it's not that much about Jimi Hendrix, it's more about taking a kit guitar that is a fairly inexpensive kit guitar and seeing, without switching things, how far can I go with this guitar? Can I make it play really nice? Can I make it sound better than it would if I just put the kit together? And the thing is, there are small things that you can do, but together they all add up and become a really nice playing instrument. It's one of those guitars that I really enjoy playing right now, and it's so much better the way I've put it together than it was if I had just followed the instructions and done nothing more than the bare minimum. It takes a little bit more extra time and effort to perfect the kit, but if you follow along in that series, you'll end up with something much nicer than if you just put it together the way the instructions in the manual came. So if you're interested, I would highly recommend you watch that series. You can apply all I say in those videos to whatever guitar you actually have. It doesn't have to be a Harley Benton Strat copy kit guitar, it could be some other brand's kit guitar, it could be maybe a nice guitar you have, it could even be a really high-end guitar that you think has some problem. In this video we're going to talk about trying to figure out what it is you need to do to mod your guitar, and it might not just be changing pickups, but we're going to talk about that a little bit too, so I hope you enjoy it. Okay, so here I have my guitar clip-off. It's a guitar that I've built myself, and we're just going to use this as a demonstration of different things, so you can think about these things and visualize them on your own guitar. Some of these things are going to be different for you, so try to just do what I do, but apply the knowledge to you. Also remember that it's very important to watch other people's videos and see if they have other information to give you, so you can do some sort of estimation of what you really need to do, and not just follow along with what I'm doing. This is my way of doing these things, but they might not apply to you perfectly, so keep that in mind. The first thing we're going to talk about is sustain. If you strum your guitar like this, the guitar will vibrate. And if you hold one hand at the tip of your headstock, like this, you should feel the vibrations of strumming. Now don't clamp your hand to the headstock, just lay your fingers on it and barely touch it. So try to hold your guitar in place with maybe your knee, like I'm doing right now, and your arm. Strum the guitar, and just feel the vibration in the tip of the head. And when the strings die out, like so, obviously naturally and not by dampening them, you start counting the seconds until you can't feel the vibrations at the tip of the head anymore. Now, you're always gonna have vibrations after the sound dies, the actual string sound goes away, but depending on how long that is, it will let you know how much the nut is dampening your strings. For example, when I do this, and I wait till the strings die and I then count, I get about 10 seconds. So before the strings die down and the headstock, actually I can't feel any vibration in the headstock anymore, there's about a gap of 10 seconds. And that means to me that my guitar gets to vibrate about as long as the sound can actually hold. And that means that there is no real problem with the strings movement. The guitar is basically allowed to vibrate for about as much as it would. But for example, if you have something like 40 seconds where the strings die out and it's still vibrating, that means that the strings are being dampened too quickly. And if you have a guitar that has maybe a plastic nut, my conclusion would be that it's better to switch out the nut before switching out the bridge. And the reason why is because it's soft, it's taking up a lot of the sound, dampening it down, but the actual body is still wanting to vibrate. So in that case, I would switch out the nut. You don't necessarily need to switch it out if you feel like, oh, well, you know, the body wants to vibrate for this long and it holds the actual sound for almost as long. There's no point in switching out the nut if that's the case. And one of the reasons why I would go at the nut first and not something else is because the nut is the least expensive part on the guitar to switch out. And I would go for maybe something like either brass or bone, or if you have some other preference that you like on other guitars, you can go to that. But usually the plastic nut that you get with, for example, an inexpensive kit guitar will be soft, and so it will most likely be what you need to switch out. Okay, so how do you know if your bridge is bad? There are several things you can do. One thing you can do is set up the action, the string height, where you want it. You can play the guitar. And so on. That was actually terrible. Anyway, and you can look at the height of the screws. And if you play the guitar a lot, they will move. There is no way to stop that. Vibrations will move screws. But the thing is, on high quality bridges, it will take a long time for them to move. And on really inexpensive ones, for example, on my Jimi Hendrix guitar, they will move super quickly. After playing the guitar for about maybe 40 minutes or something, it will be all out of whack and the saddles will have moved and the string heights will be all crazy. So just play the guitar for maybe an hour straight and see what's happened. And if it has moved, you need to switch that out because that's not the way it's supposed to be. You should at most set up your guitar once a year. Maybe two, depending on how much you play and also if the guitar is moving, you know, if you're a touring musician, for example. But you should really not have to set up the guitar, you know, more than once or twice a year. How do you know if your tuners are bad? There are a lot of things to talk about there. One thing is, for example, if you feel like the amount you turn it is uneven. For example, you can pluck the string and you can tune the guitar. You just turn it and you listen to how even the pitch is going up. And if it feels uneven, there is most likely something wrong with your tuners and you need to replace them. Another thing is, how long is the guitar staying in tune? You put on strings, you stretch the strings, you tune the guitar, you stretch the strings, you tune the guitar. And after you've done that maybe 3 or 4 times, you play the guitar for an hour and you see how many times you need to retune it. If you have a guitar that you need to retune after playing it for 5 minutes, maybe the tuners aren't holding up. And you can even look at the tuners and see if they're moving. I've had inexpensive tuners on guitars and I could see as I play the tuners actually moving, slowly turning and detuning the guitar. And if that's the case, you are having really bad tuners. Now you can do like I did in my series and open up the tuners and tighten them up, but it could also be a good indications that you need to replace them. Okay, so how do you know that the actual frets are bad? If you're playing your guitar, you will normally wear the frets out. I know people talk about things like stainless steel frets and stuff like that, but if you have an inexpensive guitar, you most likely don't have stainless steel frets on them. You can switch them out for stainless steel. Frets shouldn't wear out that quickly. You shouldn't have to level your fret guitar every year. I don't know exactly how often you should do it, but you know, definitely not every year. But if you feel like you've played your guitar for maybe a month, you already have buzzing going on, or half a year and you already have buzzings going on, and you check your fret and they are uneven, that means that you've worn them out really quickly. And I've had guitars where the frets have worn out super quickly. You buy a nice, well-liked brand and you play it, and after a year it doesn't sound as good anymore, and it's because the frets needs to be leveled. And you can definitely level them for a while, but at some point you're gonna ask yourself, are the frets made of a low quality soft metal, and are they maybe just wearing out too quickly? And so switching for higher quality frets might be the solution, because you shouldn't have to level your frets once a year, or even, maybe every other year. Frets should stay pretty nice. Obviously, you have to take this with a grain of salt, because some people play really softly and some people play really hard. And if you play really hard, you might wear out your frets faster than someone else. Okay, so how about the electronics? If your switch feels like it's getting stuck and you can't move it quickly and easy, you should be able to flick it like this. But if you can't, or if you feel and hear scratches and weird sounds when you're doing it, that means that there's something wrong with the switch, and you either have to clean it out, which is not that hard to do, or something has gone wrong with it and you need to replace. The same thing goes with the volume and tone controls. They should be fairly easy to move, and there are different brands that are different amount of easy to move, but if they feel like they are maybe easy to move a little bit and then they get hard, and sometimes they are super loose and sometimes they are thick and feel like they're getting stuck, and if they feel scratchy, for example, if you do, some swelling and you can't really do it because you hear a weird crackling noise, then the pots need to either be cleaned or they need to be replaced. And if you have issues with this happening more than, I would say, once every other year, then you know that you have very low quality parts, because you should not have to replace these that often. Okay, so how about the input jack? When do you need to replace that? How do you know if you have a good output jack or if you have a bad one? Well, the thing is, if you buy a new guitar, you plug in your cable and you feel how hard it is. And this is sort of hard for me to explain to you, but it should go in with a little bit of force, not too much. You shouldn't have to, strain yourself, but it should go in snugly. You shouldn't be able to wiggle it around much. It will have a little bit of give, but not much. And you will feel a solid connection. And it will be sort of hard to pull it out. It shouldn't be a really big effort, but it shouldn't fall out. You can open this up and you can look at the tongue on the back of the output jack. And you can press it in a little bit so that it's tighter, but a good solution could also be to switch it out. A lot of inexpensive guitars have output jacks that are really low quality, and it's one of those things that will make your guitar feel a lot nicer if you replace it. Okay, so the pickups. What can you do to the pickups? It sort of depends on what kind of pickups you have, what kind of pickups you want. First off, listen to the pickups and how much noise they have. So basically hold the guitar like this. One hand on the back here and one hand up here. Somewhere where you're not touching any metal. It's okay if you touch the strap buttons because they're not connected to anything. But don't touch the bridge or the output jack. And listen to how much noise you have. And try to figure out how much noise you have. And then play a chord and listen to how loud that chord is. And I would say, if you can hear noise, it's not necessarily the pickup, it can be the wiring. And if you look at my series about the Jimi Hendrix Harley Benton kit guitar, you will see that inexpensive guitars usually have very sloppy wiring. Wires are dangling around. So if you try to neaten it up and make the cables shorter and you twist them around and you do that kind of things, you will most likely lose a lot of background hum and noise. And if that's satisfying to you, you could actually stop there and not even getting new pickups. If you still have a bunch of noise, most likely you might have pickups that are sloppily made and there's air trapped inside of them, or really weak magnets. You can change the magnets out for something stronger. Whatever you do, don't change it for something weaker. If you have pickups that has Alnico 2 magnets, you can switch them for Alnico 5. But if you have Alnico 5, you can't switch them for Alnico 2 because that's weaker. The same thing goes for if you have ceramic magnets. Don't switch them out for Alnico pickup magnets. You will get more noise. But you can switch them out for rare earth magnets. Now don't forget that doing this will change the sound of the pickups, so you might not want to do it. You might just want to buy new pickups. Next thing is, if you want your pickups to be more punchy, you don't necessarily need to buy new pickups. You might just have to change the height of it. experiment with this before you do anything else, because you might actually have pickups that you could really enjoy if you just changed the height of them. And most pickups you can even change the height on one side and leave the other one. If you have a guitar with a humbucker, you will have 6 pull pieces that you can actually lower or increase the height of individually. So you can, for example, fine-tune the pickup for each string, and you can dramatically change the sound of the pickup that way. Just remember to make sure you know how it originally looked, because you might feel like you can't get back to the original state. For example, you can match them up to the radius of the fretboard, and you can really customize the pickup that way. It's almost like having an EQ pedal in your pickup. That's how dramatic it is. Okay, so how do you know when it's time to switch out the tremolo? We've already talked about the bridge from the other side and the point of view of holding the strings in place. But what if the problem is the actual tremolo effect that you have by moving your trem bar? Well, you should first look at, is this correctly set up? Are the screws allowing the angle of the bridge, the actual filed edge on the inside here, to move? And if that's the case, and it could move freely, try to bend the trem and see if the movement feels natural and fluent, or if it feels like it's jagged and like you have weird stops in between. Strum the guitar and bend the trem. If you feel like it's not behaving correctly and it feels natural and easy to move, it could be that the springs are too tight and that they don't really have much of a spring in them. So maybe you should experiment with replacing the springs before replacing the entire trem system. The weight of the trem will help with the movement because of how much mass is in it. So you could experiment with changing out just the block and not the entire system. It's much cheaper. A new trem system might cost you somewhere around 150 euros, but a new block might just cost something like 25 if you look for one online. And if you've seen my video series called Taking a Squire and Making It into a Custom Shop, then you will see that that's exactly what I do in that one, and it turned out super great. It's a much better trem system just because I changed the block on the back. Well, anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it helped. Let me know in the comments below if it did. Talk to me, ask me questions, and I'll try to help you. I would really suggest that you look at those videos that I've told you about. Highly recommend them. I put a lot of work into them, trying to make them accurate so that it would help you out. So do look at them first if you feel like changing some things out. If you're happy about the guitar and just want to change the pickups to something nicer, it's a perfect way to go. Sometimes you can actually find other things that will improve the sound first, and the pickups are not the worst part. And it's basically just because the pickups are usually really expensive to buy new ones. So yeah, I hope this really helps. If you liked the video, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, because that helps me out and lets me know that these videos are worthwhile. And if you have any questions or suggestions of topics you want me to cover, then write them in the comments below. I look forward to talking to you. Anyway, until next time, stay awesome and cool, and go and take one of your inexpensive guitars that you're maybe a little bit unhappy about, and see if you can apply these things that I'm talking about to that guitar, and see what it is you really need to change. And if it turns out that you're confused, talk to me in the comments below, okay? Bye bye now.